In a quiet suburban neighborhood, nestled among rows of neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences, stood a modest house that Emma and Ryan had recently purchased. It wasn't extravagant or flashy. It didn't need to be. What made it special was the sprawling backyard that stretched all the way to the edge of a dense, whispering forest. For Emma and Ryan, this feature sealed the deal. Both were avid outdoor enthusiasts who loved hiking, fishing, and camping, but rarely had the time or resources to venture far from home. This backyard felt like a gift, a little slice of nature they could call their own. The couple had dreamed of sharing their love for the outdoors with their two young children, Mia and Jake. At ages 6 and 8, the kids were full of energy and curiosity, always eager for new adventures. So when summer rolled around, Emma suggested an idea. Why not set up a campsite right in their backyard? It would give them a chance to bond as a family without needing to pack up the car or pay for expensive campsites miles away. Ryan immediately loved the concept. "It's perfect," he said, grinning. "No bugs biting us awake at 3 a.m., no forgotten sleeping bags. We've got everything we need right here." On a sunny Saturday morning, the family got to work transforming their yard into a magical retreat. Ryan pitched the tent, a bright blue one with room enough for all 4 of them, while Emma strung up twinkling fairy lights between the trees. The soft glow gave the space an enchanting feel, like something out of a storybook. They placed cozy blankets and pillows inside the tent, making it inviting and warm. Meanwhile, the kids ran around collecting sticks for the fire pit, giggling and shouting excitedly about roasting marshmallows later. As evening fell, the air grew cooler, and the sky turned shades of orange and pink. Ryan lit the small fire pit they'd bought specifically for occasions like this. Its crackling flames cast flickering shadows across the yard, creating a cozy atmosphere. The family gathered around, roasting marshmallows until they turned golden brown, or in Jake's case, slightly charred. Laughter filled the air as they shared silly stories and played games. When the stars began to appear, Emma pointed out constellations she remembered from her childhood, sparking wonder in the kids' eyes. For a moment, life felt simple and beautiful. There were no phones ringing, no emails piling up, no deadlines looming over their heads, just the sound of crickets chirping, the warmth of the fire, and the joy of being together. Even the forest behind them seemed alive, its rustling leaves adding a soothing soundtrack to the night. As they lay back on blankets spread across the grass, gazing up at the endless expanse of stars, Emma couldn't help but feel grateful. This was exactly what they needed, a break from the chaos of everyday life, a reminder of what truly mattered. But little did they know, their peaceful evening was about to take a dramatic turn. While the family soaked in the magic of their makeshift campsite, someone else was watching, and she wasn't happy. From her kitchen window across the street, Karen, the neighborhood's self-proclaimed enforcer of rules, stared disapprovingly at the scene unfolding in Emma and Ryan's yard. To her, their charming setup wasn't a delightful escape, it was a blatant disregard for order and decorum. And Karen wasn't the type to let such things slide. Karen lived just a few houses down from Emma and Ryan, in a spotless home with perfectly manicured hedges and flower beds arranged with military precision. She took immense pride in her role as the head of the Homeowners Association, HOA, a position she had held for nearly a decade. To Karen, the HOA wasn't just a group of neighbors working together to keep the community looking nice. It was her personal kingdom. Every rule, no matter how small or trivial, was sacred in her eyes. From making sure mailbox colors matched to policing the height of front yard shrubs, Karen saw herself as the guardian of perfection in the neighborhood. That evening, as Karen stood at her kitchen sink washing dishes, her gaze drifted out the window and froze. Across the street, she spotted something that made her blood boil. There, in Emma and Ryan's backyard, was a tent illuminated by twinkling fairy lights. Smoke curled lazily into the air from what appeared to be a fire pit, and laughter echoed faintly through the cool night breeze. At first glance, it might have seemed like an idyllic scene. But to Karen, it was nothing short of chaos. How dare they turn their yard into some kind of makeshift campground? What would the other neighbors think? Would this set a dangerous precedent? Without wasting another moment, Karen grabbed her clipboard, a constant companion she carried everywhere, and marched across the street, her slippers smacking against the pavement. Her mind raced with all the reasons why this so-called camping was unacceptable. Property values could plummet if people started treating their yards like recreational zones. The fire pit might pose a safety hazard. And those lights, oh, those tacky, twinkling lights, were surely distracting to anyone trying to enjoy their own evening in peace. By the time she reached Emma and Ryan's driveway, Karen was practically seething. She didn't bother knocking on the front door. Instead, she strode straight into the backyard, clipboard clutched tightly in one hand. "Excuse me," she barked, loud enough to cut through the cheerful chatter around the fire pit. Emma, Ryan, and the kids turned to look at her, startled by the sudden intrusion. Karen barely gave them time to react before launching into a tirade. "What is going on here?" she demanded, gesturing dramatically toward the tent and fire pit. "You can't just do whatever you want in your backyard. This is a residential area, not some wilderness retreat." Emma blinked, momentarily caught off guard by Karen's tone. "Hi, Karen," she said cautiously, forcing a polite smile. "We're just having a little family camping night. It's our yard, so we thought." "Thought?" Karen interrupted sharply, her voice rising. "You clearly didn't think about the rules. Did you even read the HOA guidelines? You're violating multiple sections, including those about unsightly structures and disruptive behavior. Not to mention the potential fire hazard." She jabbed her pen at the fire pit for emphasis, though the flames were modest and safely contained. Ryan stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. "Karen, I appreciate your concern, but we're well within our rights. We've checked the local ordinances, and everything we're doing is completely legal. Plus, we're not disturbing anyone." Karen scoffed, refusing to back down. "Legal or not, this is unacceptable. Your property is part of a community, and what you do affects everyone else. Those lights are blinding. The smoke is polluting the air, and who knows what kind of pests you're attracting with that food." She gestured wildly toward the plate of half-eaten marshmallows sitting near the fire. By now, Mia and Jake had stopped giggling and were watching the exchange with wide eyes. They didn't understand why this stranger was yelling at their parents when they were simply having fun. Emma knelt beside them briefly, whispering reassurances before standing again to address Karen. "Look, we understand you're concerned, but we're not breaking any rules. If you'd like, we can show you the research we did. We're happy to answer any questions, but honestly, this isn't hurting anyone." Karen's face flushed red, partly from embarrassment and partly from frustration. No one ever dared challenge her authority like this. Normally, a sharp glare or mention of the HOA was enough to send people scurrying to comply. But Emma and Ryan weren't backing down. And worse, they seemed confident in their stance. Clutching her clipboard tighter, Karen glared at them one last time. "Fine," she snapped. "But don't think this is over. I'll be keeping an eye on this situation." With that, she spun on her heel and stormed off, leaving behind a trail of indignation. As Karen disappeared into the shadows of the street, Emma let out a deep sigh. "Well, that was unexpected," she muttered under her breath. Ryan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Guess we got ourselves a project now," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Despite the interruption, the family returned to their cozy campsite, determined not to let Karen ruin their special night. Still, none of them could shake the feeling that this confrontation was only the beginning. After Karen's dramatic exit, the mood in Emma and Ryan's backyard shifted slightly. The laughter returned, but there was an undercurrent of unease. They had hoped for a peaceful evening, yet Karen's unexpected tirade left them wondering if their quiet camping night would spiral into something bigger. As they tucked Mia and Jake into their sleeping bags inside the tent, Emma couldn't help but replay Karen's words in her mind. Unsightly structures, disruptive behavior, fire hazard. It all sounded so exaggerated. Surely their little campsite wasn't causing any real harm. Still, Emma knew Karen wouldn't let this go easily. The next morning, over cups of coffee on their back porch, Emma and Ryan decided to get ahead of the situation. If Karen planned to escalate things, they wanted to be prepared. Ryan pulled out his laptop and began researching local ordinances and HOA bylaws. To their relief, they discovered that while the HOA did have some rules about front yard aesthetics, like keeping lawns trimmed and avoiding cluttered decorations, there were no specific restrictions on how homeowners used their backyards. As long as they weren't violating fire safety codes or disturbing neighbors, their camping setup was perfectly legal. Armed with this knowledge, Emma drafted a polite email to Karen later that afternoon. In it, she thanked Karen for her concerns but clarified that their backyard activities fell well within both the law and HOA guidelines. She attached copies of relevant documents to support their case, hoping this would put an end to the matter. "Let's see how she responds," Emma said to Ryan as she hit send. Part of her hoped Karen would realize she'd overstepped and drop the issue altogether. But Karen wasn't the type to back down. When she received Emma's email, her jaw tightened. How dare they challenge her authority? Worse still, they had dared to provide evidence against her claims. For Karen, this wasn't just about rules anymore. It was personal. She saw Emma and Ryan's refusal to comply as a direct affront to her power, and she wasn't about to let them win. Pacing her living room, Karen devised a new plan. If logic wouldn't work, intimidation would. Over the next few days, Karen ramped up her efforts. She started sending daily emails to Emma and Ryan, each one more aggressive than the last. "You're setting a bad example for the neighborhood," one read. Another warned, "If you continue this reckless behavior, I'll have no choice but to involve the HOA board." Each message ended with thinly veiled threats of fines or even legal action. At first, Emma tried responding calmly, reiterating their rights and pointing out that Karen's demands weren't based on actual regulations. But after several exchanges, it became clear that reasoning with Karen was futile. Meanwhile, word of the conflict began to spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors who had initially dismissed the commotion as typical Karen drama started paying closer attention. Some peeked out their windows to catch glimpses of Emma and Ryan's backyard, curious to see what all the fuss was about. To their surprise, the scene looked far from disruptive. The tent was neatly pitched, the fairy lights added charm, and the fire pit seemed safe and controlled. Most importantly, the family appeared to be enjoying themselves quietly, without blasting music or hosting loud parties. It was hard to understand why Karen was making such a big deal out of it. One neighbor, Lisa, decided to approach Emma directly. A warm and friendly woman who lived 2 doors down, Lisa had always admired Emma and Ryan's laid-back attitude. "Hey, I heard Karen's been giving you trouble," Lisa said one afternoon when she spotted Emma watering plants in the front yard. Emma sighed and nodded. "Yeah, it's been a bit much. We're not doing anything wrong, but she won't listen." Lisa shook her head sympathetically. "Don't worry too much about her. Half the neighborhood thinks she's ridiculous. Honestly, your backyard looks lovely. I wish I could do something like that with my kids." Her words lifted Emma's spirits. Knowing that others supported them made the whole ordeal feel less daunting. Still, Karen wasn't done. One evening, as Emma and Ryan sat outside enjoying the twilight, they noticed Karen standing at the edge of her property, glaring at them. She held her phone in hand, snapping photos of their yard, as if gathering evidence. Ryan rolled his eyes and muttered, "Does she really think she's building a case?" Emma laughed nervously, though deep down, she wondered how far Karen would actually go. What started as a harmless family activity had turned into a bizarre showdown. While Emma and Ryan remained confident in their position, they couldn't ignore the tension brewing in the air. Little did they know, Karen's antics were about to backfire in ways she never anticipated and unite the neighborhood in unexpected ways. As the days passed, Karen's relentless campaign against Emma and Ryan began to wear thin, not just on the couple, but on the entire neighborhood. Her constant emails, phone calls, and even late-night visits to document their backyard activities started to feel less like concern for community standards and more like harassment. Emma and Ryan did their best to remain calm and composed, knowing that engaging too aggressively with Karen would only fuel her fire. But they also realized they couldn't let her continue unchecked. Something had to give. One evening, after another round of accusatory emails from Karen, Ryan suggested a bold move. Why not invite the neighbors over? Not just to explain their side of the story, but to show them firsthand how harmless and fun their backyard camping really was. If people see what we're doing, Ryan said, they'll understand it's not some wild party or safety hazard. It's just us enjoying our property. Emma loved the idea. They decided to host an impromptu gathering the following weekend, complete with snacks, games, and a small bonfire. They sent out handwritten invitations to everyone on the block, emphasizing that it was simply a chance to connect and share a relaxing evening outdoors. Word of the event spread quickly, thanks in part to Lisa, who enthusiastically encouraged others to attend. It's ridiculous how worked up Karen is getting, she told a few hesitant neighbors. They're literally just having fun in their own yard. Come see for yourselves. Slowly but surely, curiosity got the better of many residents. By Saturday evening, nearly a dozen neighbors had shown up, some bringing chairs, blankets, or desserts to share. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, with fairy lights twinkling above and the smell of toasted marshmallows wafting through the air. Karen, predictably, did not receive an invitation, but she didn't need one to know what was happening. From her upstairs window, she watched as laughter and chatter filled the night. She could see families sitting around the fire pit, kids playing tag near the trees, and adults chatting animatedly. It was everything she feared. Proof that Emma and Ryan's so-called reckless behavior wasn't reckless at all. It was delightful. And worse, it was gaining traction. Neighbors who might have once sided with her were now laughing and enjoying themselves right alongside the very people she was trying to vilify. Unable to contain herself, Karen stormed outside, clipboard in hand, ready to confront the growing crowd. As she approached Emma and Ryan's yard, however, she froze. Nearly everyone turned to look at her, their expressions ranging from amusement to outright annoyance. Lisa stepped forward, crossing her arms. "Karen, can we help you?" she asked pointedly. For a moment, Karen sputtered, clearly flustered by the sudden attention. This isn't appropriate," she stammered, gesturing vaguely at the scene before her. "You're encouraging chaos." "Chaos?" Lisa laughed, glancing around at the peaceful gathering. "Looks pretty calm to me. Honestly, Karen, I think you're the only one causing a scene here." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, leaving Karen visibly shaken. She opened her mouth to argue but thought better of it when she noticed several neighbors pulling out their phones, presumably to document her behavior. Realizing she was outnumbered, Karen huffed and retreated to her house, slamming the door behind her. The incident only strengthened the bond between Emma, Ryan, and their neighbors. People lingered long after the sun set, sharing stories and swapping ideas for future gatherings. One neighbor joked about starting a backyard campout club, while another suggested organizing a block-wide outdoor movie night. The initial tension sparked by Karen's complaints had transformed into something beautiful, a renewed sense of community. For Emma and Ryan, the evening felt like a turning point. They had gone from feeling targeted to being celebrated. Their backyard, once a source of conflict, had become a symbol of unity and resilience. And though Karen still lived nearby, her influence was waning. Every laugh, every shared smile, and every glowing light in their yard served as a reminder that kindness and connection would always triumph over entitlement and fear. The backlash against Karen's behavior didn't stop after her embarrassing confrontation at Emma and Ryan's backyard gathering. If anything, it only grew stronger. The neighbors who had attended the event left with a newfound appreciation for the couple and a growing frustration with Karen's overbearing tactics. What started as quiet grumbling among a few households soon turned into open resistance. Lisa, in particular, took it upon herself to rally the neighborhood. "We're not going to let one person dictate how we live," she declared during a casual chat with a group of neighbors. Her words resonated deeply. Inspired by Emma and Ryan's defiance, Lisa came up with an idea that quickly gained traction: a backyard solidarity night. She proposed that everyone on the block set up their own mini campsites in their backyards on the same evening. The goal wasn't to provoke Karen further, but to send a clear message that the community valued freedom and creativity over rigid control. Flyers went up on mailboxes, and texts buzzed through group chats. Within days, nearly every household had signed on to participate. On the designated night, the transformation was remarkable. Backyards that were usually dark and empty now glowed with strings of fairy lights, lanterns, and even small fire pits. Tents of all shapes and sizes dotted the landscape, some elaborate and others hilariously makeshift. Kids darted between properties, playing flashlight tag or roasting marshmallows, while adults gathered around fires, sharing stories and laughter. The air buzzed with excitement, and for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt truly alive. Karen, of course, couldn't ignore what was happening. From her kitchen window, she stared out in disbelief at the sea of twinkling lights and cheerful activity. Every direction she looked, there was another tent, another fire pit, another family enjoying themselves without a care in the world. It was as if the entire street had flipped her authority the bird, not loudly or aggressively, but subtly, through sheer unity and joy. For someone who thrived on order and obedience, it was maddening. Determined to regain control, Karen sprang into action. She drafted an emergency email to the HOA board, accusing Emma and Ryan of orchestrating a coordinated rebellion designed to undermine her authority. She attached photos she'd taken of the glowing backyards, labeling them as evidence of widespread rule violations. But when the board members reviewed her complaint, they were less than impressed. One member dryly remarked, "Looks like everyone's having a nice time. Hard to see the problem here." Frustrated by the lack of support, Karen decided to escalate matters further. She called the local authorities, claiming that the numerous fire pits posed a significant fire hazard. When the fire department arrived to investigate, they found nothing amiss. Each fire pit was small, contained, and far from any structures or flammable materials. Officers chatted politely with residents, admired the festive atmosphere, and left without issuing a single citation. For Karen, it was yet another blow to her credibility. Meanwhile, the solidarity event brought the neighborhood closer than ever. Neighbors who had barely spoken before exchanged phone numbers and made plans for future get-togethers. Even those who had initially sided with Karen began to distance themselves, realizing her obsession with rules was alienating her from the very people she claimed to protect. At one point, a teenager jokingly hung a sign in his yard that read, "Sorry, Karen, we're camping." His parents laughed but left it up, knowing full well it would drive Karen crazy. For Emma and Ryan, watching their simple backyard idea snowball into a neighborhood-wide movement was both humbling and exhilarating. They never intended to start a revolution, but they couldn't deny the positive impact it had on the community. Their once quiet cul-de-sac had become a hub of connection and camaraderie, all because they refused to back down when faced with unreasonable demands. As the night wound down, Emma stood on her porch, gazing out at the constellation of lights dotting the neighborhood. Ryan joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Looks like we got ourselves a proper little rebellion," he said with a grin. Emma chuckled softly, feeling a mix of pride and relief. "Maybe," she replied. "But I think it's more than that. It's about standing up for what makes us happy and showing Karen that she can't scare us into living her way." In the distance, Karen's house remained dark and silent, a stark contrast to the warmth radiating from every other home on the block. Though no one said it out loud, it was clear Karen had lost this battle, and possibly much more. The tipping point came sooner than anyone expected. Karen, desperate to regain control and salvage her crumbling authority, made one final drastic move. She called the police. Her claim: that Emma and Ryan's fire pit posed a serious safety risk to the neighborhood. She even went so far as to suggest that the smoke might be harmful to residents with respiratory issues. A bold accusation, considering no one had complained about it before. When the squad car pulled up to their house late one evening, the entire street seemed to hold its breath. Emma and Ryan were sitting by the fire pit, sharing stories with Lisa and a few other neighbors, when they noticed the flashing lights. At first, panic fluttered in Emma's chest. Had Karen finally succeeded in causing real trouble? But Ryan stayed calm, standing up to greet the officers as they approached. "Evening, officers," he said warmly, extending a hand. "What can we do for you?" The officers explained Karen's complaint and asked to inspect the fire pit. Ryan nodded and led them over, pointing out the safety precautions they'd taken. The flames were small and contained within a metal ring, surrounded by stones to prevent sparks from escaping. There was plenty of space between the fire and any nearby trees or structures, and a bucket of water sat close by, ready to douse the flames if needed. One officer crouched down to examine the setup, nodding approvingly. "This looks pretty standard," he said. "Nothing here violates city codes." The officers assured Emma and Ryan there was no issue and thanked them for being responsible homeowners before heading back to their car. As they drove away, the neighbors erupted into cheers and applause. Lisa gave Emma a triumphant high five. "Guess Karen just got owned by the professionals," she joked, earning laughter from the group. For Emma and Ryan, the moment felt like sweet vindication. Not only had they followed all the rules, but now they had official confirmation that their backyard activities were perfectly legal. Karen, however, didn't take the news well. From her living room window, she watched the scene unfold with mounting fury. Seeing the police leave without issuing so much as a warning must have been unbearable for her. Her face flushed red as she paced back and forth, muttering under her breath. To make matters worse, several neighbors began mocking her openly. A teenager across the street hung a new sign on his fence: "Fire inspected and approved." Another neighbor left a tray of cookies on Emma and Ryan's doorstep with a note that read, "Thanks for keeping our neighborhood fun and fire safe." But the real blow to Karen's ego came during the next HOA meeting. Attendance was unusually high, with nearly every household represented. When Karen stood up to voice her concerns about backyard violations, she was met with groans and eye rolls. One homeowner bluntly interrupted her, saying, "Karen, maybe it's time you focus on actual problems instead of picking fights with people who aren't doing anything wrong." Others chimed in, agreeing that her micromanaging was becoming a nuisance. By the end of the meeting, a motion was passed to limit Karen's role in enforcing minor rules, shifting responsibilities to a committee instead. With Karen sidelined, the neighborhood wasted no time embracing its newfound freedom. Inspired by the success of the Backyard Solidarity Night, Emma and Ryan organized an outdoor movie night in their yard. They rented a projector, set up a giant screen between two trees, and invited everyone to bring blankets and snacks. Classic films played under the stars, and the scent of popcorn mingled with the cool night air. Even those who had initially hesitated to join the rebellion showed up, drawn by the promise of good company and free entertainment. As the credits rolled on the second movie, Emma looked around at the sea of smiling faces illuminated by the glow of string lights. Kids sprawled on blankets, parents chatted animatedly, and even some of the quieter neighbors were laughing along with the crowd. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had gripped the neighborhood just weeks earlier. For the first time, Emma realized how much Karen's constant policing had stifled community spirit and how powerful it felt to reclaim it. Across the street, Karen remained holed up in her house, blinds drawn tight. She hadn't spoken to anyone since the failed police visit, and her absence only strengthened the bond among the rest of the neighbors. Though she still lived nearby, her influence was all but gone. What started as a simple act of defiance had blossomed into something far greater, a neighborhood united by kindness, creativity, and a shared love for breaking free from unnecessary rules. As the weeks passed, Karen's presence in the neighborhood became almost ghostly. She kept to herself, rarely venturing outside except for quick trips to her car or mailbox. Her once pristine yard began to show signs of neglect, leaves piled up along the edges, and a few flowers wilted in their beds. It was as if her defeat had drained her of the energy she used to pour into maintaining control over others. For Emma and Ryan, it was strange seeing someone who had once loomed so large in their lives shrink into near invisibility. But they didn't dwell on it. Instead, they focused on nurturing the newfound sense of community that had blossomed around them. The outdoor movie nights quickly became a cherished tradition. Neighbors took turns hosting, each adding their own flair to the events. Lisa transformed her driveway into a drive-in theater with folding chairs and vintage popcorn boxes. Another family set up a karaoke machine after the film ended, leading to impromptu sing-alongs under the stars. The gatherings weren't just about entertainment, they were about connection. People shared stories, exchanged recipes, and even organized carpools for school pickups. What started as an act of resistance against Karen's tyranny had turned into something far more meaningful, a tight-knit community where everyone felt seen and valued. Karen tried to reassert herself at one point, sending out a mass email reminding everyone of HOA guidelines regarding noise levels and outdoor decorations. But her words fell flat. Most recipients deleted the message without reading it, while others replied with polite but firm responses pointing out that no rules were being broken. One neighbor even attached a photo of his kids roasting marshmallows under twinkling lights, captioned, "Just keeping things safe and fun." Karen never responded. At the next HOA meeting, a formal vote was held to officially limit Karen's authority within the organization. While some members argued for fairness, the majority agreed that her obsessive focus on trivial matters was alienating residents and damaging morale. In the end, her duties were redistributed among a newly formed committee, ensuring decisions would be made democratically rather than dictated by one person. When the results were announced, Karen sat silently, her face pale and expressionless. Afterward, she quietly slipped out of the room, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Though Karen still lived nearby, her influence continued to wane. Without her constant meddling, the neighborhood thrived. Families spent weekends decorating their yards for holidays, hosting barbecues, and organizing scavenger hunts for the kids. Emma and Ryan remained at the heart of it all, their backyard serving as a hub for creativity and connection. They even installed a permanent fire pit, complete with built-in seating, turning their property into an unofficial community center. One evening, as summer gave way to autumn, Emma stood on her porch watching the golden hues of sunset paint the sky. Ryan joined her, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I never imagined our little camping idea would turn into all this." He gestured toward the lively street, where laughter echoed from multiple backyards. Emma smiled, leaning into him. "Me neither," she admitted, "but I'm glad it did." Across the street, Karen peeked through her curtains, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light. She watched the laughter, the camaraderie, the joy radiating from every corner of the neighborhood, and sighed deeply. Whether it was regret or resignation, no one could say. But one thing was certain: Karen's reign as the self-appointed enforcer was over, and in its place stood a community united not by fear or obligation, but by shared experiences and mutual respect. For Emma and Ryan, the ordeal became a story they'd tell for years, a tale of standing up to entitlement, finding strength in unity, and rediscovering the simple joys of life. Their backyard, once a battleground, had become a sanctuary, a reminder that sometimes The best way to fight darkness is to shine a little light.